Bedtime. Apollo and the Bridge of Dreams. Underneath an old stone bridge by the edge of a bustling city lived a boy named Apollo. The bridge, weathered and worn by time, was Apollo's home. Its arches provided shelter from the rain, and the steady hum of traffic above was a constant lullaby that sang him to sleep each night. Apollo wasn't like the other children who played in the parks or went to school with shiny backpacks. He had no toys, no school, and no family to speak of. But he did have a dream so big that it kept him warm even on the coldest nights. Apollo's life had not always been this way. There was a time when he had a small, cozy home with his mother and father. They were not wealthy, but they were happy. However, one harsh winter, a terrible sickness swept through their town, taking his parents from him. With no relatives to turn to, Apollo was left alone. He wandered the city streets, his small feet leading him to the bridge where he found refuge. Despite his circumstances, Apollo was not a boy to be pitied. He had a heart full of kindness and a mind full of stories. Every night, as he lay on his bed of old blankets and newspapers, he would stare up at the bridge's stone ceiling and imagine grand adventures. In his dreams, he was not a lonely boy under a bridge, but a brave knight, a wise king, or a great explorer. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, Apollo sat by the edge of the bridge, his feet dangling above the flowing river. He watched the water ripple and shimmer, reflecting the fading light. As he sat there, lost in thought, he heard a rustling sound behind him. Turning around, he saw a figure approaching. It was an old man, with a long gray beard and eyes that twinkled like stars. The man wore a tattered coat and leaned on a wooden cane as he walked. Despite his ragged appearance, there was something magical about him, something that made Apollo's heart race with excitement. "Good evening, young one," the old man said, his voice gentle and warm. "Good evening, sir," Apollo replied, standing up and giving a polite nod. "Do you need help finding your way?" The old man chuckled softly. No, I know exactly where I am. But what about you, boy? What brings you to this bridge, alone and far from home?" Apollo hesitated, unsure of how to answer. The truth was simple, he had nowhere else to go. But saying it out loud made it seem more real, more painful. So instead, he shrugged and said, "I live here." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And do you enjoy living under this bridge?" Apollo bit his lip. "It's not so bad. I have the river to keep me company and the stars to light my way." The stars," the old man mused, looking up at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Do you know, young one, that each star up there holds a dream?" Apollo's eyes widened. "A dream?" "Yes," the old man continued, "a dream that is waiting to come true. And if you believe in your dream with all your heart, the stars will guide you to it." Apollo felt a flutter of hope in his chest. "But how do you know which star is yours?" The old man smiled mysteriously. "That, dear boy, is for you to discover. But remember this. Dreams are not just for the rich or the powerful. They are for anyone who dares to believe in them." With that, the old man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, shining object. He held it out to Apollo, who took it with trembling hands. It was a tiny star-shaped pendant, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Keep this close to your heart," the old man said. "It will remind you that no matter how dark the night, there is always light waiting to be found." Before Apollo could thank him, The old man turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the city. Apollo stood there for a long moment, staring at the pendant in his hand. It was warm to the touch, and as he held it, he felt a surge of determination. That night, Apollo tucked the pendant safely under his shirt and lay down under the bridge, his head filled with dreams. But this time, his dreams were different. They were not just stories to pass the time, they were visions of a future he could create, a future where he was more than just a boy under a bridge. The next morning, Apollo woke up with a new sense of purpose. He decided that he would no longer wait for life to change. He would change it himself. He set off into the city, the pendant close to his heart, and began asking for work. It was not easy. Most people turned him away, thinking him too young or too ragged. But Apollo did not give up. He believed in his dream, and that belief kept him going. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Apollo worked hard doing odd jobs for shopkeepers, cleaning windows, and running errands. He saved every penny he earned, always keeping the pendant close as a reminder of his dream. He learned new skills, made new friends, and slowly but surely, he began to build a life for himself. One day, while cleaning the windows of a grand library, Apollo noticed a help wanted sign in the window. The library was a place of wonder, filled with books and stories from all over the world. Apollo's heart leaped at the thought of working there. He rushed inside and asked the librarian if he could apply for the job. The librarian, a kind woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, looked at Apollo thoughtfully. "Do you love books, young man?" she asked. "More than anything," Apollo replied earnestly. The librarian smiled. "Then you are just the person we need." And so Apollo became the library's assistant. He spent his days surrounded by books, learning everything he could about the world. He read stories of far-off lands, great heroes, and wise king stories that fueled his dreams and inspired him to keep going. As time passed, Apollo's life began to change. He was no longer the boy who lived under the bridge. He was a young man with a future. He continued to work hard, saving his money and dreaming big. He made new friends who supported him, and with their help, he was able to rent a small room in a boarding house. It wasn't much, but it was a place he could truly call home. But Apollo never forgot the bridge or the pendant that had started it all. He would often visit the bridge, standing by the river and gazing up at the stars. He would hold the pendant in his hand and remember the old man's words, "Dreams are for anyone who dares to believe in them." Years passed, and Apollo grew into a wise and kind man. He became a well-respected librarian, known for his knowledge and generosity. He helped countless children discover the magic of books, just as he had discovered it himself. And though he had come a long way from the boy who lived under the bridge, he never lost the sense of wonder and hope that had carried him through the darkest times. One evening, as Apollo was closing up the library, he noticed a young boy standing by the door. The boy looked ragged and tired, much like Apollo had looked all those years ago. Apollo's heart went out to him. "Hello there," Apollo said kindly. "Are you lost?" The boy shook his head. "No, sir. I was just wondering if I could maybe work here. I love books, but I can't afford to buy them." Apollo smiled, seeing himself in the boy. "Of course you can. But let me ask you something. Do you have a dream?" As the boy's face lit up with joy, Apollo felt a warmth in his heart that was brighter than any star. He knew that he had come full circle, that he was now the one passing on the gift of dreams. And as he watched the boy disappear into the rows of books, Apollo reached into his pocket and touched the star-shaped pendant that still hung around his neck, a reminder of the power of dreams and the magic that can be found even in the darkest places. And so, under the same bridge where his journey began, Apollo's story continued not just in the pages of books, but in the lives of all those he inspired to dream. The end.